intro presentations, and now this intro, I'm bound to disappoint. And I'm bound to disappoint, A, because I'm not a very good speaker, I have a big accent, but also B, because I'm a male speaking about such a topic, yet I want to speak about it because it does matter to me. And there is a personal reason why it matters, but also a professional one. The personal is, it was a day of reckoning. I have 2 sons and a daughter. And I remember my daughter was 3-year-old, and I realized that she is just outstanding in maths and science. She is just a natural. My boys are also great, I'm not misunderstand me, but my daughter has this unbelievable determination and natural strength. And I remember how proud I was, but I also remember that there was a shadow of doubt on my happiness. And I did not realize, why do I have this? And I was sitting in the bed in the evening, I was speaking to my wife, and then I realized that there is something I have known for over 30 years, but I've never actually admitted to myself. Being highly talented and being a woman, you are in disadvantage. And this was something I've never admitted to myself, but I knew, and I needed my daughter to actually make me realize, oh my God, there is something here which we are not honest about telling it, not necessarily even admitting to ourselves. So this is the reason why I am very passionate about this, as Luis mentioned. Yes, this is something really matters to me, but I'm not here to speak about that. I'm here to speak about why it does matter to McKinsey & Company, or a global consulting firm, which I'm part of, and which is investing very heavily into this topic. I would like to speak about 3 things. Number 1, why does this matter in a very rational, hardcore, objective way? Number 2, I would like to speak about why this is not a problem which is solving itself easily or quickly. And number 3, I would like to speak about what can be done. This is all supposed to be an intro to far more knowledgeable people in the panel who will then give you more details. Now, what I will speak about, though, will be full of numbers. This is for 2 reasons. 1, because I'm a geek. I love numbers, so I want to speak about numbers. But number 2 is because this is a topic which is very important, that it is not just tackled at an emotional level, but it's tackled at a very rational level. So to begin with, we are speaking about enormous numbers. Some analyses suggest that global GDP would increase by a whopping $28 trillion if female participation and female leadership would reach male levels. And maybe that's too much, but even if you would just move countries in each region to the level of the top performing countries in terms of sector mix, in terms of part-time versus full-time, in terms of workforce participation, you would add $12 trillion of global GDP. That's bigger than China. This is not a topic. And you could say, yes, but this is a lot about female participation in general. But if you zoom into leadership, you have heard it from the previous speaker who was quoting some McKinsey research on that. It's actually even bigger. Diverse companies, and very importantly, diversity doesn't just mean it's more women. It could be also the opposite. Lack of diversity is an issue for companies, whether they are full male or full female leadership, and typically they are full male. More diverse companies tend to outperform when it comes to return on equity, when it comes to EBIT margin. Looking it over 20 years period, the difference tends to be 20–30%. During crisis periods, such as 2007 to 2009, the difference is even more staggering. Simply, the difference between these EBIT margins, the difference between this return of equity, these are huge numbers. Maybe 15% to 22 doesn't look that big. But diversity turns out to be the single most important profit driver, growth driver, economic impact driver in the world. And if we as consultants are investing into Lean 2.0, digitalization, reinventing the future, which are all very important, +2, +3% ROE topics, why shouldn't we look at something which is +7? This is not just a moral issue. This is a hardcore economic issue, one of the biggest levers. If you want to make a company more successful, you need to make it more diverse. You will create more value. This should be absolutely on the top of our agenda, purely because of very practical reasons. It should be rational. A computer should come to this conclusion. Why is that? This is partially, of course, pure logical mathematics. Not using women leadership proportionally the same way as male leadership is a problem. But the value in diversity is actually quantifiable. Again, numbers, more numbers. It is quantifiable because women lead differently than men. I wouldn't say they necessarily lead better, but they certainly lead differently. There are certain leadership behaviors, especially when it comes to people development, especially role modeling, which they naturally use more than men. There are also areas where men tend to, certain tools which men tend to use more than women. Typically, a more diverse group tend to have a more balanced way of using skills. And the fact that currently the global boardroom is so much biased to male leads weakness in areas when women tend to be strong. We had this question up front, and some of you were looking at it. Yes, there are more Jones than women in the S&P 1500, which is shocking. The answer was, by the way, to this question, there is actually also more Davids, but there are a bit more women than Bobs. But this is, hooray, yeah? But this is a joke. We should not have this conversation. These statistics are showing that we need to have a diverse system. At least we should have a 25, 35, 40, 50, 60%. We should have a full diverse leadership structure. We are far, far ahead from them. So this is answer to the number one question, why does this matter? Number two, I don't think, and we can clearly show it, it is not solving itself. McKinsey every year runs a large panel of over 15,000 participants, actually 2,000 companies, 15,000 interviews, millions of people in the database. And we see that we still have this funnel problem, which was shown in the previous presentation. 45% of entry-level professionals are women. By the way, more than 50% of university graduates are. Yet only 17% end up in the C-suite. And don't forget, this is 2015. This is not 1960, 1970, 1980. We have had a gender revolution 50 years ago. Usually revolutions tend to be a bit more efficient than this one, right? I don't think this is a particularly successful one. In fact, if you're looking at the trends, there is some positive trend, right? We have seen, for example, public companies, Financial Post 500. In 10 years, we moved to 9 to 12% board seats, which is great. But again, this is very, very low. If you look at this trend, to reach to economically healthy levels of diversity, to unlock these trillions of dollars and these growth opportunities, we would have to wait another 40 years, and that's terribly long. This, and I think this is also the title of the topic, this should not be a 100-year journey. Now, I'm optimistic, and I agree with the previous, much better, speaker on many areas. I would, however, also warn that not all trends are positive. For example, the fastest growing industries, the companies who are entering into the top leading companies, most of them are biased towards sectors which are the worst in gender diversity. I'm a big fan of Silicon Valley, but Silicon Valley is one of the most testosterone-smelling business environment in the world. It is actually harder to be successful as a woman in Silicon Valley, and therefore, true hats off for the rare exceptions. I'm not saying it should be like this. I'm not saying it will be like this. I'm arguing if you look at global trends, and you are looking at also what is happening in Europe, what is happening in other parts of the world, we are not seeing major improvements. This is not a topic which solves itself. This is not a topic which, hooray, we are on the right direction. We may be on the right direction, but not at the right speed. So what can be done? Last question. Now, again, we have done big research. We love numbers. And we came to a couple of, however, very qualitative conclusions. Here is the problem. The problem is everybody admits it, maybe with a bit less passion and maybe with nicer accents, but every business leader admits that this is a problem. However, we find a couple of things. Number one, most companies are putting this as a goal, but their efforts are not truly data-driven, not practical. They're not approaching it as a business problem. Yeah, we should do something, let's speak about this, let's do these things here and there. If it would be a cost efficiency program or a digitalization program, there would be hardcore digital analysis behind it. Companies are not approaching this the way they should. they're not approaching it something appropriate to the scale of the upside. Number two, commitment tends not to really cascade down. There is a lot of commitment in the top floor. It not necessarily goes to all level. Another even more important thing is lots of things of this is paper. One of the dangerous things about women leadership that it's fashionable, and because it's fashionable, everybody speaks about it. A lot of things are around the paper. And finally, a lot of the initiatives tend to come from a small group of women. They tend not to involve a lot of people. So, and last chart from me, what could make a difference? We have done an analysis of looking 335 companies who are doing really well versus thousands who are not in the arena. And we're trying to identify what makes a difference. We have found that a lot of things are not. Actually, quotas were not necessarily helpful. A lot of gender diversification indicators into leadership didn't really matter. What really moved the needle were things which you see on this stuff. First and foremost, CEO commitment, right? Does the CEO really follow up? Targeted skill building programs. Mandates for executives to really mentor women, and women need different type of mentorship structure, and we heard from the previous speakers. Performance evaluations which are consciously debiasing, they make a difference. We need this. By the way, we in McKinsey are working very hard, but unfortunately we are also definitely not there yet. We are very proud that we were able to double the ratio of women in our partnership group, but we are far from 50%. And when we are looking at our own evaluations, we find that we have unconscious bias. So there are things which make a difference, and these are the list. I will not read the last. I think it is very, very important that most of the actions which are really moving the needle are practical actions, not talk, not beautiful charts. So just to close this overall with one summary, this does matter. And it is not just a moral issue, although it should be enough, but it's not. It is a hardcore economic issue with earth-shattering, large-scale economic implications. Number two, it is not a problem which is solving itself. It is not something which is okay. We need to accelerate it. And number three, it is a thing when there are practical, well-researched levers which needs to be pulled. But it's very important that we are not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. So this is my intro. I hope it is helpful.